Welcome to This Week in Richmond. I'm delighted to have a very special guest, Senator Louise Lucas, first elected in 1991.
1991.
Yes, and a friend prior to that time, and delighted to have you on This Week in Richmond to talk with our viewers about what's happening. As we have this conversation, we're right in the midst of the redistricting.
Absolutely, we are. And I can tell you, since that's where you're starting, Reverend Bailey, good
Oh,
morning to you,
good
and
morning
thank
to
you
you.
for having us on
Yes.
this morning. I've watched several of my colleagues as they've been interviewed, and I see that they've hit a lot of the hot button issues, but I'm glad nobody really went into any detail about redistricting, so that might be where I'd like to
Well,
start.
that would be great.
And since you said, yeah, of course, you know, I came to the General Assembly in 1991. I was elected that year after redistricting. So that was my
That's
first
right.
experience when the newly created 18th Senatorial District sprawled from Portsmouth all the way down to Halifax County and included 12 localities. And so for the first 10 years I was here in the General Assembly, I represented a district that ran from Portsmouth down Route 58 about 3 hours almost to Halifax County, and it butt
Wow.
right up to Pennsylvania County and Martinsville and Danville. And so a lot of folks out there said, well, she's down this close to the area, so we'll just call on her for some of our expectations
That's
as well.
right.
So I felt like I
Yeah.
pretty much represented a goodly portion of Southside. And I can tell you, it has been a wonderful experience. I feel profound gratitude for the opportunity to serve in the Senate of Virginia, and didn't have any input into that first redistricting plan, nor the second one that came up in 2001. And as you know, after that year, I ran for Congress, and even though it wasn't a majority minority district, I came within 4 points of winning, so that was an exciting experience also. But this year, getting up now to the 2011 redistricting process, I did have an opportunity to take a look at it and make some suggestions for changes that might improve it, because as we went across the state to the various public hearings, we heard a resounding concern on the part of citizens about maintaining communities of interest,
Yes.
and not to have a district that runs 200 miles from one point to the other, where you're crossing several communities of interest. So best we could, we tried to do that this year. But as you know, with the out-migration of people who are going north, we
Yes.
lost a lot of population down in the Hampton Roads area. So unfortunately, we had to pull from other localities to try to make up the amount of individuals needed in a voting block to constitute either a House district or a Senate district. And everybody's not going to be happy after redistricting, and we know that. You know,
Right.
1991, there was a hue and cry about, well, you know, she lives near the shipyard and she's representing people down in Halifax County and tobacco country. And so
Right.
we tried not to do so much of that this time, but it's very difficult to get through that process without including some localities. And so with this newly created 18th Senatorial District, I will only move from 12 localities that I represent to 11, but it will still be not quite the same distance.
Not quite as long across Southwest.
Not quite as spread out as it was before.
Right.
But again, you know, I just welcome the opportunity. I just feel blessed to have the opportunity to be able to serve. And so with my new constituents, I intend to serve them as heartily as I did the last two districts, and just look forward to it. Now I just want to talk a little bit about some of the legislation
Yes.
that we covered in this
Yes.
session. Well, now that I'm on the Senate Finance Committee, I get to see quite a bit more
Oh, yes.
than I did my first
Right.
two redistricting cycles. And so this year there were 3 bills that were introduced that would have required us to offer optional contributions to the retirement benefit for our state employees. And a lot of us didn't feel so comfortable with that. So what the chairman did was he wrote a letter to JLOC asking them to study those 3 bills so that we can provide the very best options for our state employees. Even though it's going to be optional defined contribution, we still didn't understand all we thought we knew about those 3 plans. And so we chose rather to do the study. And I think that's going to serve all of the people that serve us as state employees. And I personally want to look out for those folks, because, you know, they're the ones who
Sure.
make sure that all of the engines continue to turn so that we can do the work that we do. And so
So you'll know more about that issue when you come back the next session.
absolutely.
Yes.
So when we come back for the 12 session of the General Assembly, we'll know more about it.
Right.
And then maybe we can move forward in a better way in
Yes.
terms of, and as you know, for employees who will be employed after July 1st this year, they will have to pay 5% of their retirement plan. And of course, those who were hired prior to that date, we're going to give them the 5%, and we will continue to have their benefits come out as usual. And so those were some of the major issues that we covered. And today is going to be an exciting day.
Oh yes.
Oh my
yeah.
heavens.
Let's let our viewers know we're having the conversation April 12th.
Yes.
And this is an exciting day, an exciting time here at the General Assembly.
It
so
absolutely
go ahead
is.
and tell the viewers what's most exciting.
Okay, because as soon as I'm out of the studio, I will be headed down to Senate Courts of Justice, and of course the House Courts will be meeting also. Prior to our leaving the session, before we adjourn signing out from the General Assembly session in January through February, we approved the funding for the 21 judges judgeships that were positions that were vacant. And so we interviewed for days and days and days, and some of the most incredible people you can imagine came here to be interviewed for the different judicial positions all across the state. We have general district court positions that are available, circuit court positions, juvenile domestic relations court, and of course we have vacancies on the intermediate court, the Court of Appeals, and also 2 vacancies on the Supreme Court. So today, when the Senate Courts of Justice meet, we will meet the certified individuals and have a better feel for who we'll be selecting to put on those various benches. I understand that the House finished their work on yesterday, and they will probably be sending over the candidates that they've certified already. So we'll mesh those two together, and then we'll all look at them and come up with some understanding of how we're going to move forward. It's exciting because we have women who are in competition for the Supreme Court, for the Court of Appeals, for circuit court positions, for the general court position, general district court positions, and juvenile domestic and relations court positions. And so we have so many people to choose from, and they're also incredibly talented. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be exciting. Trying to find out who the final 21 will be.
Yes, and as our viewers, some of them may not know, and we'll let them know, that when you passed the resolution calling for the redistricting session, you included in that language that said, and the election of judges.
And the election of judges.
Because there's not just general laws and bills that are being introduced. It's either redistricting or it's judges.
That's exactly right.
And as we have the conversation, the redistricting of House and Senate plan has been completed and has gone to the governor.
Exactly.
Waiting the governor's action.
Right.
The judges you're working on, you also have congressional redistricting to work on between the 2 chambers.
Absolutely. And both chambers have introduced plans for the congressional districts. And I think the one plan mostly provided for the incumbent protection. It pretty much kept all of the individuals who are serving in Congress right now in pretty much safe seats. And so the Senate, we've introduced our plan, which tweaks that just a little bit. And so in so doing, there will be 2 districts that will look a little bit different than they did coming over from the House. And so it will be exciting to see where that goes. And as you know, I was involved in one of those court actions when the redistricting took place in 1991, because there was some concern about whether or not I would be able to represent a district that had 12 localities in it that was sprawling all across, a portion of South Side. Then there was also the lawsuit, as you can recall, in 2001. And, I have let me say, I have every expectation that this would end up in court again. That's pretty much par for the course. But in the end, we will all be able to represent roughly 200,000 individuals each in each of the 40 Senate seats. And so it's just an exciting time.
Oh, it is that. And as our viewers will be hearing and seeing on the TV news and reading, once you end the redistricting work that you all are doing, once the governor has signed off or agreed, or if the governor proposes any changes and you all consider them, then it is on to the Justice Department
Absolutely.
and possibly, as it has happened in the past, even on into the courts.
Into the courts, into the courts. And that's, I don't know how we get around it. There's always a challenge because people are concerned about whether or not it meets constitutional muster.
Right.
And so
right.
we have to look at those issues, and it also has to be cleared through, pre-cleared through Justice Department. And so after we've looked at all of it, I feel fairly certain that the plan that was drawn in the Senate will pass all of the mileposts that are stationed for us to get to that point. And then once everything is settled and in place, then we will start notifying the voters in the different parts of the state
Right.
where their voting precincts will be. And so that's going to be a part that we will pass on to our local registrars. And a lot of them are not excited about some of the split precincts
Yes.
that have been included. But as has been the case in the past, where there are split precincts, I feel fairly confident that we will be able to fix those by moving where you might have just a few individuals who maybe go to the same precinct with their neighbors but vote for different candidates. We will come back and amend those plans and fix that at a later date. That's pretty much the way the process works.
In our closing minute, tell our viewers some of your experience, if you would, about chairing a committee, because
Yes.
you are a committee chair.
Yes, yes. As I said, this is my 20th session of the General Assembly, and I'm now chair of Senate Committee on Local Government, and I'm also a member of the Senate Finance Committee, which
Yes.
everybody salivates for when they get here.
Yes.
I serve on rules, so there's a lot of exciting things going on there. I've served on education and health since I was first elected. That's the position that's really near and dear to my heart,
Right.
trying to provide a quality education for our children. And of course, courts of justice, which is where I'm off to now, so
Yes.
that we can certify the candidates that have been interviewed for the different judicial positions all across the Commonwealth.
Well, Senator Louise Lucas, thank you so much for being a guest on This Week in Richmond and for informing our viewers on all these issues. And we look forward to having a conversation with you again in the near future.
Absolutely. I look forward to it, and thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.